Why are so many men who love philosophy sad? Well, today, Friedrich Nietzsche is going to drop some truth bombs on all the sad boys out there who love philosophy. Because I remember when I was taking philosophy courses that so many of my fellow students, when I got to know them, were on antidepressants, contemplating suicide. They were mew little sad boys always complaining. And I was like, is this how you guys are grappling with this information? All of this is liberating me. This is exciting. This is awesome. And so today, with a little help from Nietzsche, we are going to do a deep dive on this topic. And if you guys don't know, Right Conscious is where we talk about the best books and authors of all time. And of course, Nietzsche is a part of that group. If you look at the playlist down below, you will find a couple more videos on Nietzsche. And if you look at my channel, you will find over 500 videos on the best thinkers of all time and best artists. And so, enough for me, everyone. Let us now hear from Nietzsche. And this is from his book, The Gay Science. The intellect is, with most people, an awkward, obscure, and creaking machine, which is difficult to set in motion. They call it taking a thing seriously when they work with this machine and want to think well. Oh, how burdensome must good thinking be to them. That delightful animal, man, seems to lose his good humor whenever he thinks well. He becomes serious, and where there is laughing, anxiety, thinking cannot be worth anything. So speaks the prejudice of this serious animal against all, joyful wisdom. And this aphorism is one of the most important things Nietzsche has ever said, in my opinion, because many of us have been programmed to think that our interest in philosophy doesn't matter. If we go back to childhood, many of us had access to the internet. And I remember researching Nietzsche in the 8th grade and telling my parents about existentialism and all this stuff. And they said, yeah, and gave me the cold shoulder. When I tried to tell everyone I knew, my sister, my friends, my teachers, nobody cared. I generally got conditioned into this insular world where the only person who cared about what I was learning was me. And I get it. I know all of us are supposed to be stoic, Spartan Taoists who don't care about anybody else. I'm doing this all for me, and I get it. But eventually, that burden starts to weigh down on you because here I am, 18 years later, after I first read and learned about Nietzsche, and almost nobody in my life cares about philosophy. I can't talk about this still with anyone except people online. And when I look at my life and all the work that I've put into reading and writing and thinking and trying to improve, a lot of it hasn't done anything for my social or financial standing. And most people under that duress, under that weight of decades of trying to share information and be lighthearted about it, fall. They become sad. They become resentful. And the solution of this is the harmony of pen and sword, as Yukio Mishima would say. It's taking philosophy from the page and applying it to the world and showing it to the world through your personality and how you act and what you say. And this is almost an impossible task because we have not been trained to do this. Free thinking, radical thought is not promoted in high school classrooms. I am an English teacher right now, and I have a student in one of my classes, and he is for sure a free thinker. He understands how to speak through metaphor. He's read many things, but when he starts speaking, people start scoffing at him, and I have to stop them. But he's generally seen as this know-it-all, even though he isn't. He's seen as crazy, even though he's really speaking from his heart and connecting it to the philosophies that we are talking about. And this continues in academia, and we've structured our academic systems this way because we don't want to create political radicals. Because if we all started, for instance, in school, enacting our philosophy, or I should say philosophy that we see on the page onto the world, what happens? Well, revolutions happen. We start to realize that this world we are living in is not good. Most of us live in a surveillance state, a control system that does not want us to wake up, because if we woke up through art or philosophy in mass as a collective, we would no longer need that surveillance state or that control system. And I'm going to spit some facts here, everyone. Nietzsche is an outlier. Crazy, right? You are not Nietzsche. You most likely don't have the disposition that he does. the disposition for humiliation and being cucked and like so many different things. Thank God. But because you don't have that, then that means that you are going to have to go through what I call the philosophy or knowledge parabola. And so when many of us encounter philosophy and knowledge for the first time, we are up here at the left end of the parabola. We are on a high. We are getting introduced to all these new ideas and our world is expanding. But as we continue to read and grow, our entire life starts to tumble down. And that's because it is basically impossible once you learn enough, not just on the page, but in the world, to resonate with people who aren't in a growth-oriented mindset. And I know the polite thing that we're supposed to say for everyone on Reddit is we're all the same, we're all supposed to get along, but you do outgrow friends that don't grow. And even if you try to continue to be friends with them, conflicts arise from that new difference. And eventually, unless you are in a rare circumstance, you become isolated, not just from your friends and your family, but all the foundations, your religion, how you view the world. Everything you once knew, you become isolated from. And this also happens with just growing up in general. And so many new thinkers become totally isolated and reach this bottom of the parabola where they become what we call philosophy bros, lit bros, logic bros. They are in this us versus them mentality where they feel because they have put in the work and they are different and they are smarter or whatever than most people, at least in an intellectual sense, they feel isolated. Like nobody can understand them. And all of us have been there before. And unfortunately, many people stay there forever. And when you live down at the bottom of the parabola for too long, you become awkward and obscure and creaking. And unfortunately, many people who get into the dark arts of reading and philosophy are in general introverts. Like you may see me talking to you right now and see my extroverted personality, but growing up, I was very insular. And so we not only have to overcome returning to a world that doesn't understand us, but we also have to overcome our introversion and all of the problems, which has only gotten worse. In time immemorial, you had to interact with people. You had to go out to the store and do things and be of the world. Unless you're like Spinoza and Kant and like those dudes, even though they did. But unless you were an outlier or like a hermit or whatever, you had to be of the world. Not necessarily, obviously there's farmers and stuff, but I'm talking about like thinking people trying to make an impact. But now you can stay at home, work a remote job or just a random job that's super easy and live on your phone, live in a fantasy world and never have to confront the ontology of phenomenology, the beingness of being. And now with the rising rates of ADHD, I'll even say autism and so many other things because of our poor lifestyle and habits and many other things, and us just becoming obviously more aware that those things exist, then we are creating this army of resentful, awkward, and sad thinkers. And as I've talked about countless times on this channel, I run a book club, everybody. I'll just talk about it right now. We are the most active book club in the world. I read 8 to 10 books a month with my book club over on Substack. I also post breakdowns of those books and we meet and talk about them. But one of the books that we are covering right now, right behind me, is Infinite Jest for the second time. And I have an Infinite Jest course. And Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace is about overthinking. It's about people who overthink. 99% of addicts are overthinkers. If you overthink, you live in a fantasy world. Many of us who are into the intellectual arts are for sure overthinkers. But as I'm sure you already know, overthinking leads you to become awkward, leads you to become depressed and lost in your own thoughts. And I'm not advocating that we all become ignorant men of action, as the underground man would say. But we've built a world that is paralyzing people with overthinking. The amount of data that you take in that creates comparison and contrast and thought just by scrolling through shorts, TikTok, or Reels for even 30 minutes, even if you are a strong individual, is insane. Life is already hard enough. I'm not on any social media like actively scrolling, but just my job being a high school English teacher makes me already overthink my life. I couldn't imagine adding all that other stuff. And when I have, it's been burdensome. So let's talk about solutions now. Because here on Right Conscious, we talk about the causal factors, but that's what logic bros do. That's what philosophy bros do. We also talk about the solutions to problems. And this is actually one of the ways out, that if you talk shit about something, then you not only need to have the solution, you need to be the solution. And the way to do this is, as I said earlier, through the harmony of pen and sword. For many overthinkers, they are not only overthinkers and awkward thinkers and these sad philosophy bros, they are not only stuck in their own insular world. They don't even have a presence, an impact on objective reality. And so the first solution is to look back at everything you have already read, which for many of you guys is dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of books, and how many articles and podcasts. Look at all that information and ask yourself, what have you done with that information? Because as I said earlier, if you are talking to your family or your friends, it may be hard to get across to them Nietzsche's philosophy or whoever, but that means that you are at the bottom of the parabola. One of the things that happens at the bottom of this knowledge parabola is that you don't recognize that you are just not good enough at sharing that information. Something that I've learned and had to learn as an English teacher and as a human who's trying to change the world in a more positive way is that I have to get better at communicating the philosophies and the ideas that I value. And I have to turn it into a zero-sum game. I have to figure out by any means necessary how to be able to get that information to the most amount of people. Even if I have to cut away certain parts, even if I have to deconstruct and mangle it a little bit. And the reason I'm saying this is that in actuality, if you feel like knowledge is making you miserable, if you are an awkward person, then what you should do is stop consuming so much information for a while. Just stop. You won't hear me say this on this channel very much. Just stop reading, stop thinking, and figure out how to integrate that information into your soul and into a being that is active with it, that knows how to relate that information to reality. Because with the overconsumption of information and the contemplation of it, you are turning it into these odd referents within your soul, these odd little semantical games that you get to play with yourself. But what if you took these values, these reference, these things you hold dear, and planted a flag in reality with them? And step one isn't sharing it with the world, but step one is taking it outside of your head and putting it in reality. And what that means is that you start viewing reality through that lens. Instead of deconstructing and searching for something new and always being on the go, what if you took one of these philosophies that you like a Nietzschean philosophy, and applied it to your life and how you see things? Not saying that you should be a will to power bro, but I'm saying that if you lived that philosophy, if you integrated that philosophy and saw the world through it for a year without variation or slight variation, obviously this is your own personal synthesis of it, then what would end up happening is that it would become easier to communicate it. It's just a natural process that if you are living this reality, then you begin to understand it at a more subtle level. You get through the quantity of interactions that you are having out in the world, a bunch of things to examine or put on the other side of that referent. And eventually you will become a walking embodiment of that philosophy. And when you are that, you not only can share information, you are the information, you are the vibe. And that's what a true leader is. That's what our goal should be with this knowledge. Because if you think that you're going to find truth in this game of philosophy, then you're a fucking idiot. Excuse me. It's just, you're not going to get any closer. And it's personally way more fun to not live in your head, but to live with these philosophies out in the world. And what's crazy is that you probably already have, from the research you've done, 10 years of stuff that you could go live out in the world. And what's wild is that if you plug something in, if you plug something beautiful like a Nietzschean philosophy, or even a very religious or something philosophy into your soul, and you live it and you experience it, then when people see you, they want to emulate you. Because most people wandering around, what's their OS? What's their operating system? It's probably just an amalgamation of nothing, just a bunch of random things. They're not running on one thing. For instance, in my life, for years of my life, I looked at reality through the lens of Eastern philosophy in different sects within it. For a year or two, I was just full Zen Buddhist. And I got really deep into like Kundalini meditation and that. And I was using that and I was leading the world with that. But then there were other times in my life that I walked through the world and was presenting a more rigid Western Christian lens and like, natural law and these things. And like, that's what the vibe and the approach and the things that I was talking about and contemplating and sharing and showing others. Because there is no right philosophy. The right philosophy is something that's going to transform people and make them better, which is thousands of them. And to not be awkward is to be able to share those. It's to be able to talk to an old person, a beautiful woman, a 16-year-old dude that's, playing Clash Royale, and be able to get them at least somewhat interested in thinking about that philosophy. And most of them aren't going to care, but they're going to see you as a referent of that. And when you're able to do that, your life will attain so much more purpose. You will feel so much better. So that is step one, is to just put it outside of yourself. Then step two is to live that out for a year and see what happens. And then step three is to continue doing that process, because eventually, and this is something that you can do as you read, instead of being scattered. And this is what happens with this consumption culture. Well, I need to read Plato, then I have to read Socrates so that I can understand Heidegger, but then I have to circle back to Spinoza. And you're just trying to go through these things instead of slowing down and saying, okay, I'm going to focus on this thing and make it my reality. And that's what a lot of the great innovators and thinkers of the past have done. That's what Nietzsche was doing. He created his own philosophy and he was living it, but he built it from others. And he was a talented genius. And I hate to say it, but I have to be objective. You are most likely not Nietzsche. I know I'm supposed to say, hoorah, yes, we can all do it. And I believe we all can. But if you look at what Nietzsche did, a lot of his great revelations, and he was very talented, came after decades of thinking and trying and tinkering. And so the way not to be sad anymore is to live philosophy. And it may blow your mind, but it's possible. I've lived through, in 2018 to 2019, I was living a Gnostic, kind of a dark Gnostic, German idealistic philosophy. And the way you can tell if you are doing this is that you're relaxed about it. That when these things come up, when you're talking to people, that it isn't forced. There's so many people that sound awkward when they're talking about it. But when you understand it, then you don't need to impart it on people. It just happens. It's just, with the words you speak, it's just going to happen. It's as relaxed and carefree and automatic as possible, especially in kind of the latter stages once you integrate it. And then our goal, and this is what I think the goal of reading and these things are, and actually putting the work in, is that by the time you're in your 40s and 50s and it's the time for you to be a father, to be a leader in your community, to be at the peak of your career, to do these things, you have 10 to 20 of these that you're easily ready to cycle through depending on the problem that is presented to you. Because philosophy on its own is useless. Reading Spinoza's ethics and understanding in that, it is useless. But when someone comes to you or you have to think through a problem and you not only know the information, but know how it relates to the world in tens of thousands of different ways, which you can't exactly remember, but is integrated in your body from all the experience and memory, that's real philosophy. So there it is, everybody. That is the solution to the ever-growing crisis of sad boys in philosophy. If you guys would like to hang out more on this channel, I would love to have you. If you would like to join my book club, we are reading some of the greatest works of all time. We are reading through the works of Dostoevsky, Nabokov, Tolstoy, Hemingway, countless others, Thomas Pynchon, Cormac McCarthy. I have 100 plus hours of content on my Substack, some of which is free. Substack, if you don't know, is where the literary renaissance and the philosophical renaissance is happening right now. If you want to share your ideas of your own philosophy, your experiences of integrating, or just write essays about philosophers, the best place to do it right now is substack.com. And so thank you guys for being here, and I will see you very soon in my next video on philosophy.